Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Je m'appelle Anne Cavoukian et je suis canadienne et arménienne. So I had to say that for my mother, who insisted that I keep my Armenian and learn it, and I'm so glad to her. I'm so grateful because it has served me very well over the years. Very small story about my background. I was raised by my two grandmothers who were amazing. My parents were working all the time. My grandmothers lived at home with me. And they, fortunately, were able to escape the Armenian genocide, but they were in the camps, prison camps, for quite a while, and they had their prison numbers tattooed on their forearms. And growing up with them taught me two things: the vital importance of freedom and safety. You must have freedom and safety. And what I hope to leave you with today is that you must have privacy and security. We can and must have both. It's not an either-or proposition, and that's the messaging I'd like you to take away today. But I always want to start by dispelling some myths at the beginning of any talk. I served 3 terms as Privacy Commissioner here in Ontario, and there was so much misinformation that you are exposed to. That I tried to clear up. People tend to associate privacy with secrecy. It's about having something to hide, right? If you don't have anything to hide, you have nothing to fear. Such utter nonsense. I always said that could have been the motto of the Stasi police in the Third Reich, because it is utter nonsense. Privacy is not about secrecy. It's about control, personal control over your personal information. Freedom of choice is critical as to who accesses your information, how it's disclosed, and how it's used, because it can have massive repercussions. The Germans have a wonderful term for this called informational self-determination, that it should be the individual who determines the fate of his or her personal information. And it's no accident that Germany is the leading privacy and data protection country in the world. It's no accident they had to endure the abuses of the Third Reich, where they were stripped of all of their privacy and all of their freedom. And when that ended, they said, never again. And they have stood to that. I've been to many conferences in Germany. Every conference is started with a reference to that time, and never again. And they have just been amazing. Years ago, in my first term as Privacy Commissioner, I developed something called Privacy by Design, which was all about trying to be proactive, trying to embed privacy into the design of our technologies, our operations, our policies, so that you can prevent the privacy harms from arising, not just offer some kind of regulatory compliance after the fact. I want it much like a medical model of prevention. I want to prevent the data breaches, prevent the privacy infractions. And we've had great success with this. So in 2010, Privacy by Design was unanimously passed as an international standard by the International Assembly of Privacy Commissioners and Data Protection Authorities. The conference was in Jerusalem that year. Usually our international conference is in Europe. It was in Jerusalem that year. And what amazed me was that it was unanimously passed, because most commissioners, and I say this with great respect, are lawyers, and they're lawyers. I'm a psychologist. I graduated, I did my master's and PhD at U of T. I studied psychology and criminology, and I took courses at the law school, but I wouldn't consider myself a lawyer. I'm not. The lawyers love regulatory compliance, because you can look at, section 29, sub 2, part A, and apply that to the fact situation and get a resolution. It's firm, it's concrete, it's real. The problem is, and this is what I learned afterwards, when I talked to my fellow commissioners, and I said, I'm surprised you voted for this. And they said, Anne, we're all aware of the fact that we have ubiquitous computing. We have massive data, connectivity, Facebook, social media. Everything is in a connected world now. And what I realized is what they realized, that we were just getting the tip of the iceberg in terms of privacy commissioners, that the majority of the privacy harms were remaining largely unknown, unchallenged, unregulated, because we couldn't get to them. It was impossible. So we wanted to switch to having a proactive method of embedding privacy into design to complement regulatory compliance after the fact. You had to have both. We could no longer rely on regulatory compliance. So that's why this was passed, and we've had great success with this. It has a real global presence. It's been translated into 39 languages now, Actually, 40, just last month, a couple of months ago, I was speaking at Harvard to the law school, and I asked them what I always ask everyone, if you have a language that isn't represented here, because usually I have a slide deck, you would see all the languages, I would say, please come and speak to me afterwards. Maybe we can work something out. So this lovely, lovely lawyer came up to me, and she was from India, and she said, I noticed you don't have Urdu on there. Would you like me to translate this into Urdu? I said, oh, yes, I'd be so grateful. So that's coming. So we're going to have 40. So the essentials to privacy by design, which has this global presence now, is you have to be proactive and preventive upfront, and you have to reject zero-sum models. Ladies and gentlemen, zero-sum is the worst thing I can imagine, and it's everywhere. It's either or. You can have privacy or security, privacy or business interests, privacy or data analytics. It's utter nonsense, and it's always privacy that gets dropped in this win-lose proposition. And I'm not suggesting it should be the other way around, but I'll be damned if I'm going to say you're going to have to give up privacy to get all these other interests. And so we substituted what is called a positive sum model, which is really simple. Instead of privacy versus, get rid of the versus, substitute and. Privacy and security. You can have both. And it's that difficult and that simple to do. We spent a lot of time during my 3 terms as privacy commissioners showing that you could do this. We have a paper called Operationalizing Privacy by Design. It's actually a compilation of 22 papers we wrote with all of the major tech companies in the world. Think of any major tech company: Microsoft, Intel, HP, Oracle, IBM, of course. I know I'm leaving out a bunch. We worked with them on showing how you can do this in the area of sensors and video surveillance and NFC, near-field communications, and name it. We just did dozens of papers, and we wanted to show that this was real. And if you don't do this, I can guarantee you're going to have a data breach. I'll never forget, years ago, we have legislation that was introduced that said in Ontario, all houses had to have smart meters on them. This was mandated by law by Dalton McGuinty. And so I spoke to him at the time, and I said, well, of course, you can pass whatever laws you want. I'm very concerned about the implications of the wireless communications and them being intercepted by unauthorized third parties. And it can reveal a great deal about your activities within the home, the last bastion of privacy. I said, Premier, would you allow me to focus on this and do some work, and let's really develop the most privacy protective systems possible? He said, of course, be my guest. I would love that. Make us a leader. Okay, we did. We produced something like 7 papers in this area. We worked with all of the leading, Toronto Hydro, Hydro One, all of those. Don't tell me I have 2 minutes. I started late. No, I will have more minutes because I did start late. So I'll never forget, San Diego Gas and Electric approached me, and they said, we'd like you to come down and speak to us, because in California, smart meters weren't mandated by law, but it made sense, and they wanted to put it on the houses. But the streets, the San Diego Gas and Electric would go into a neighborhood to enter the street. The cars of the residents of the street blocked their entry. That's how much they objected to this. So they asked me to present to them, and what are you guys doing in Ontario? It sounds good. Can we do it here? I presented to them, and they bought into it. And I'll never forget at the end, the CEO said to me, well, young lady, I mean, at least he called me young lady. Well, young lady, what's this going to cost me? And I said, with due respect, sir, you're asking the wrong question. You should be asking, what's this going to save me? Because I guarantee if you don't do it, your costs are going to skyrocket, because I guarantee you're going to have data breaches. And these days, they're not just lawsuits, they're class action lawsuits. Look at Equifax, dare I mention that? 23 class action lawsuits. One of them alone is seeking damages in excess of $70 billion. But far worse than the cost is the damage to your brand and the damage to your reputation, which may be irreparable. I'm going to speed ahead, and I'm going to end on this subject, which you need to know about. There's a new law coming out in the European Union in May of next year called the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR. This is going to change the world. Why? It's one overarching law that will be replacing the 28 separate privacy laws of the 28 member countries. So that's big in itself. The other big thing is for the first time ever, it has privacy by design actually in the law as a statute. So Canada rocks. We are all over the world now. And it has something, privacy as the default setting. Privacy as the default, which is the second foundational principle of the 7 principles of privacy by design, means the default is you get privacy. There's no expectation for the consumer or the citizen to scour the terms of service and all the legalese and the privacy policy to look for the opt-out box that says, don't use my information for any purpose other than this purpose that I intended. Nobody does that. We know that. It's just too busy. It's too crazy. People don't have time to do that. It flips it on its head. Privacy as the default says, we will not use the information for any other purpose other than the purpose you gave it to us for. If we want to use it later for a secondary use, we'll come back to you and seek your positive consent. This is such a game changer. It's huge, and everybody wants to do business with the EU. The US is scrambling to do something because their laws don't come close to it. Canada no longer comes close to it, and our Federal Privacy Commissioner, Daniel Terrien, has approached the government to raise our laws and introduce privacy by design into our laws. And I should mention one thing. You're thinking Canada is really great on the privacy front. In some areas we are. In other areas, we are as bad as anybody else. The RCMP have been engaging, and the only reason we even know about this big time is because the CBC did a big investigation about 6 months ago on the RCMP's use of IMSI catchers or stingrays. What they are, they impersonate cell phone towers. A cell phone tower, the way your phone works, it pings off of the cell phone tower and your phone works and you can communicate. When you impersonate a cell phone tower, as the RCMP did, without a warrant, what it does is they collect all of the cell communications and texts, et cetera, in a particular area. They get everything. And they're looking for a bad guy, right? Sure. So once they scour what they've collected and they notice there's no bad guys in there, they get rid of the information, right? They delete it? Not so much. Why not? Well, we could use it for something else. The hell you could. It's not your information. That is information on law-abiding citizens. You don't keep information that you want, especially without a warrant. That's why we have to be vigilant to insist upon privacy here. We are entering into an era where privacy is under constant threat. It is under siege with all the surveillance activities. You can imagine Mr. Snowden's revelations have changed the world in terms of concern for privacy is now in the 90 percentile regularly in both the US and Canada. I've been in this business a long time, over 20 years. I've never seen stats in the 90 percentile. There's enormous concern. And also, don't be fooled by the view that, oh, kids don't care about privacy. Utter nonsense. Dana Boyd, New York University, has done a ton of research on this. They care deeply. But the way they care about it may not be the way we look at it. But they care deeply about privacy, and they're very worried about what's going to happen to their information in the future. So I know I have to stop now because the gentleman allowed me to go a few more minutes. I want you to, one more thing, just one final thing. I've just started a new international council. It's on global privacy and security by design. Because anytime you have an increase in terrorist incidents, starting with Charlie Hebdo, San Bernardino, Manchester, all the ones in the UK, the pendulum swings right back to forget about privacy, we need security. Of course we do, but not to the exclusion of privacy. That's my goal, is to change the worldview on that. Just a small thing. So. But I've got the most amazing founding members of this council. Darren Entwistle, he's the CEO of TELUS. Michael Chertoff, he was the second Secretary of Homeland Security. Jill de Guerchoff, who is the Director of Counterterrorism of the EU. Greg Wolfond, he's the CEO of SecureKey. We've got amazing people. We're going to do a major launch in January. And if you have any interest, go to www.GPS by Design. I want to make a joke on GPS. GPS, Global Privacy Security by Design.org. And if you have any interest, please sign up. There's no cost to joining. It just means that you will agree to advance the messaging that we have to have privacy and security. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot have any freedom without privacy. It forms the foundation of our freedoms. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.